So good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the opening session of this track. It's a pleasure to represent Kigen here. We have a bit of a history with this event. Last year, in this very room, we presented to our ecosystem exclusive event with regards to sort of the latest leading edge products and coming to market around iSIM, the integrated SIM. So today, in this very public session, I would like to bring the outcomes of some of those collaborations through the last year. My name is Hayes-Thakore, and I'm VP of Marketing at Kigen. Our session is going to be of two parts. I'm going to open with some remarks and introduce a little something we have for you today. And then I'm going to be joined by two of our panelists, Vincent Korstanje, CEO of Kigen, who has been instrumental in our journey, will give you a little more context around iSIM today and in the future. And it's also an opportunity for you to quiz him for the hardest questions you can think of. And we'll also be joined by Ken Otsuki, who's looking after all of the connectivity side ecosystem around Sorocom. And Sorocom has been a brand that has become really well known for developers looking to build smart products with a view to really engaging with that data. So Ken will also provide some context around some of the latest announcements that they made just last week. So it's an exciting time. For my part, I have seen the Internet of Things develop for the last 12 years. And it's been really focused around learning what customers are trying to solve with Internet of Things. What does sensing in field bring to a business? How do you really bring that proposition forward to make sure that you're driving innovation in your sector, really differentiating your offering, and what that leads to in terms of really impact? And that power of IoT is really coming to light in some present-day examples as IoT systems scale. So just take an example from last month. Aqua Analytics is a company that ran a small pilot by putting IoT sensors on their water meter, on their water pipeline through water meters. Now, this seems a perfectly normal thing to do in today's world. One single sensor resulted in a really interesting discovery. They found that one of the water pipes was leaking into a nearby runoff, making sure that when they carried out the fix, they found 2,239 kiloliters of water went down to 85 kiloliters of water. That's a 25 times reduction in that water leakage, saving them $10,000 a day. Now, imagine the person who has to pick up this reading. You can close your eyes and, I don't know, but that might not be your happy place. You have to figure out whether you can trust that data. You need to understand that it is coming from one of the sensors that's been deployed, not being tempered or manipulated by environmental factors or by any other data streams. And you need to be able to understand that it is something that is verified through your network and through your systems. Otherwise, it would be a nightmare, let alone a few sensors across some very remote water pipelines. Think about this on a national or global deployment, which is why we think that in the examples that I've seen, customers really are starting to build an IoT inside pool through the identities of devices. And that's where Kigen's story comes along. Wrong button. Kigen was born out of the vision to secure the connected world's devices and data. And we do that by eSIM and iSIM technologies. iSIM is the integrated SIM, which came about through a way of looking at how IoT can scale, be affordable, and be secure by design. The SIM essentially gave a really strong model of authentication, which was working very well for smartphones. but that doesn't scale to IoT, in which how can we really build devices with the security that can also be used as a root of trust. And so there are two types of use cases that we saw. There are small and very constrained devices, like the water meters you might see in the prior example, or how can you really get a hyper-networked set of sensors to really show insights through data that makes sense. So both of these use cases really drive propositions that can allow us to really look at security and what that enables. We've seen this happen a little bit before, and so it asked us to show that what happens when what we saw with the internet can be possible for the Internet of Things. How do we truly realize the potential of the value that's in these devices? So the way to move this forward was to lower costs, to integrate robust and immutable trust that allows ISIM to be used as a trust mark for many applications, as many as possible, and do it in a standardized manner so that we can avoid technology fragmentation. So the good news is that 74% of you today at this conference are building smart devices with a view to turn them into smart solutions. Many of you are developing with cellular, and we understand some of the challenges that you're coming across. So today's conversation is about a platform of how we really solve that. 2022 has been a landmark year for eSIM. We've seen that eSIM profile downloads have grown to nearly 150%, and an estimated value global market for eSIM and iSIM devices in the next 5 years is north of $16.3 billion. So, and the Internet of Things already has billions of devices, and this number is growing. With security in place and integrated, how can we really kickstart an economy of things? And that's where we take the inspiration from what happened at the Internet. So the Internet had been around for about 15 years, but really what drove as the killer application to make Internet the core of our society, give it really the impact it has had today, is e-commerce. We've seen that e-commerce drives nearly $5.6 trillion in the economy just last year. It's given us technology giants like Amazon, PayPal, many others that are everyday names. And by 2025, if we can get transactional security on IoT, the economy of things is forecasted to be $12.6 trillion. So that's a great market to aim for. And we started to see some examples of this. The first in our world, at least, that Kigen had been part of is our work and collaboration with EnergyWeb and Core, which we presented here last year. And it's great to see that this has really been successful in taking many more use cases. So here we have devices, through their identity, being able to authenticate onto a network, as well as be supported and protected through a blockchain to provide an exchange of identity so that data from there can be traded. This can enable lots of different models of the Internet of Things economy. Pay by consumption, so that you can only pay for the resources that you use, or insurance-based models where you can provide favorable policy setups so that the contract setup and the transaction setup are in line with the characteristics and tuned to the user. And overall, you can provide a much more consistent user experience. Smart contracts is another key area for the Internet of Things. How can autonomously transactions take place, but with the user being in control of the rules that have been set in? And all of this means that the data can be automated, can be exchanged, and can support goals for sustainability. It's particularly in the energy web example, the data streams we're talking about are those that are coming from renewable sources of energy. But that's eSIM. And that same model is transferable to iSIM. We are also partnering with Vodafone Digital Asset Broker that can enable these services from EV charging to paying for tolls on your car. Those services are to be expanded. And today we have some tools that can help you in your journey to bring that future to bear. But before I do that, I want to give you a quick refresher, because not everyone in this room might be aware of integrated SIM. The integrated SIM comes as the next generation technology that takes the SIM functionality into something that is truly integrated into the system on chip. A lot of the technical advantages have been the first kind of head turners for iSIM when we've introduced it. First and foremost is the size, because we all, well, some people, including myself in this room, might remember the original size of the SIM. Through plastic optimization, we managed to get sort of nano SIMs and others, but they're still removable but discrete SIMs. eSIM brought in something that was much more tuned, taking that SIM functionality for IoT, but really making sure that it could be soldered down, which better environmental performance, and can bring the capability to remotely provision the SIMs, which is something that you really need for IoT. And then when you take that eSIM capability and drive it down into the silicon, that provides a huge benefit in the form factor, about 98% smaller than eSIM, fitting in a fraction of 1 millimeter square. Another driver that has been in the last year an attractive option for companies adopting iSIM has been the kind of consolidation of products it brings, where given the turbulent times that chipset shortage as well as part shortage has had, reducing the bill of material where the radio, the MCU, and the secure OS within the temper-resistant element can be brought into one is truly something that has opened up new options to companies addressing key things for consumers. Also, I have to acknowledge, Matt being in the room, that Transformer Insights also showed last year that across multiple use cases, integrated SIM showed around 13% reduction in total cost of ownership through a deployment. So, with those benefits in mind, really, how do we bring a wider access to iSIM? When we run a survey of 750 enterprises, one of the key calls to our industry has been that companies want to understand and get access to actual real hardware that they can build with. And today we have something a little bit for you that will move in that direction. The aim for what we want to do is to really drive the deployments that are looking at more than 10,000 units per year. Why that number? It's because when we get more access, we still want to understand that these are delivering a proof of value in the business. The toughest part we find through the last 5 years of seeing iSIM products come to market is that when deployments scale beyond this volume, we start to see a fuller understanding of the total cost of ownership, the lifetime costs, both in data and devices. And as iSIM involves the binding of connectivity profile with the device IDs, this needs to be really worked in the way that it supports your manufacturing flow. That learning is also built into what we are trying to make happen with what I have to show you in the next slide. And ultimately, really, we want to empower manufacturers who are looking to drive the next innovative IoT products. So with that, it's a pleasure to really announce that Kigen is opening up access to the best module kits that are available for your evaluation. So these are, we have 3 already on our website that you can look through and you can request. We are working together with all of our ecosystem to get further ones through the summer months. And we have 3 more partners expecting to release their kits via this program in the next couple of months. But it's a great pleasure to really make this a joint effort through a working partnership across our ecosystem. So we have the Flex I-Enable iSIM accelerator, which is a hardware development platform that brings along both the application side of things as well as the enormous pool of expertise that Flex brings in building secure hardware and connected hardware. We have the Murata 1SC EVK, which really looks at one of the most widely deployed iSIM module in the world. The 1SC has been something that has gone through a large amount of productionization. And we also have the Quectel BG773A module EVK. Quectel, being a chosen partner of high-volume manufacturing, have been instrumental in actually bringing so many connected IoT products to market. Again, this is going to be something that's bundled in with connectivity with a really aggressive pricing. So this is a fantastic suite of 3 different options that are available to you today. If you build your own hardware yourself or you contract with a contract manufacturer or a system integrator, please spread the word and register your interest. I'll sort of put a hyperlink here. And I'd like to just quickly go through how does it work. So this isn't a kit that is widely available. It is for developing hardware in volume. And what we do is establish your business case and geographies, your requirements. We also bring along the vast pool of our ecosystem in connectivity that can support. And today we'll be joined by Soracom, great example of someone who's gone through commercial development to make it widely available on their platform as well. Those EVKs are loaded with your chosen connectivity profile and the chip IDs. That fusion takes place at Kigen, and we make sure that that is delivered to you. There might be requirements of operators that require you to have device-level certification, and there's support from the ecosystem to help work that. And ultimately, once that is possible, you will have a fully ready-to-deploy at scale product and solution. We talked a little bit about the connectivity ecosystem, but here's our LPWAN connectivity coverage map. We're fortunate to have an unparalleled choice in and support from the connectivity partnership. I need to get this right. So the leading operators and the top 3 IoT operators in every region are something that we can work with today. If there are areas where you see a little bit of gray here, those are on request. So there are NB-IoT networks that can be brought in through your requirements. So essentially, this is an invitation to come and look at what can be built, both by this amalgamation of connectivity choice as well as hardware being available today. And with that, it's an invitation to unlock new value, both as we look to smarter devices for the economy of things, built with blockchain and further trust, as well as the next generation of AI. In healthcare, in security, in logistics, in automotive, and smart cities. So with that, what will you pioneer? It's really over to you now. And to help develop this a little bit more, I would like to invite my panelists over to the stage. So Vincent and Ken, please join me on stage. Would you please give a warm welcome to our panelists? Thank you very much. I'm told that this is always on, so I need to use it to show that. So Thank you very much for joining me on stage today. So Vincent, you've been involved since the very get-go of iSIM. Tell us a little bit about the journey to getting to iSIM. What were some of the factors that resulted in that disruptive idea? I only gave a very short glimpse of it. I'm sure there's more context you could add to it.
Sure. I hope you can hear me all. So Kigen spun out of ARM in... Hear me all? Kigen, I'm quite a loud talker anyway, but loud foreigner, apologize for that. So Kigen spun out of ARM in 2020, and actually the idea of Kigen started in 2016 in ARM when we were thinking about security. Security in IoT is super important, and there's multiple ways of solving that. At the same time, we're looking at now what will really take IoT off to really start flying. I was talking to a washing machine manufacturer from Turkey, and they go, we have a Wi-Fi module in our washing machine. We love it. We can get all this data. The only problem is that he ran into my mother. Not literally, but he let verbally into my mother because she doesn't put her washing machine onto the Wi-Fi. Right? She might want to, but she probably wouldn't know how to. So he has this quite expensive module, $7 of Wi-Fi in his washing machine and not getting the data. So he was looking at how can we solve this. Now clearly you can solve this with a narrowband IoT module, and actually I think Gary here worked with the wireless community and the Weightless. I think it was that developed some of the ideas of really low-cost radios that are now connected with cellular. So that brought in, okay, we get a SIM, right, with that. And SIM is a security, and actually SIM is really interesting when it comes to security because it's been tested for many years, it's been attacked for many years. It's stood the industry and the attacks pretty well. There here and there are some problems, but mainly tends to be in the operator networks, and they have mainly been solved. So it's pretty solid. And if you really want to have an endorsement, people like MasterCard and your banks and your social media all trust SIM as a way to authenticate. But SIM is quite big, even though they have shrunk it a bit and quite cumbersome, and IoT is really small. So we go, okay, and the market was working on eSIM. Well, that's interesting. So can we do more with an eSIM than just network connectivity? And that's what we in Kigen thought about, is kind of the identity of a device is actually something that is really important for security. If you store it in a really strong vault, like a SIM, that's really good, but at the same time you need to solve some problems. And the problems you need to solve is that the supply chain of SIM is quite cumbersome, because you have to have a separate part. It's really high secure, so you want to know it to be integrated in the device, so eSIM was better. But actually eSIM itself is still taking up space, and if you then combine it into what you're seeing with ARM, seeing a lot is that multiple functions were combined, like the radio, the application processor, and security still being on the side, quite exposed as well. So we thought if you put it all together, you can actually get a better solution. So that's kind of really where the thought and the idea came from.
Brilliant. I also remember you talking about some of the deployments you'd seen in stadiums. And that was another really interesting aspect of where constrained devices and IoT come to really kind of show their requirements.
Yeah, clearly it's really important when you're deploying like 50,000 sensors around the stadium. This was a use case in the US. That the security is baked in so strong that you don't have to update it. At some point, the stadium ran into trouble that they had to do a firmware update for every device. And actually, that was a great idea, but the battery couldn't cope. Right? So the battery would effectively drain the device with one firmware update. And again, show you that you can have great ideas. At some point, it needs to be really important you design the device right from the start. Sure, you can go with a firmware update, but if you then have to change all the batteries in 50,000 sensors, that is not really feasible. So we thought, no, that's why we went to the highest standard. I think the hardware folk in the room know that that's PP84, the protection profile of SIM is ridiculously hard. It's almost the same as banking cards. But if you go to that standard, you know that you are really protected against many different kinds of attacks. And you don't have to do redesigns. You minimize the amount of updates you need to do. We can also install with Kigen, we can install your many profiles in the factory. Mm-hmm. Again, allows you to, instead of having to download a whole new profile, if you're in a different region, you can just switch on a different profile. So we're really thinking about that manufacturing chain. Doesn't mean you can't update it, but just means you don't have to update it as much. And that's really important, that you have to update the capability. but at the same time also try to design a device that it doesn't need that capability, because if you have to update it and you drain the battery, right, it's useless. So you need to think about as small as possible updates.
And that also illustrates really well kind of why volume changes what you need to do and what you need to consider. Brilliant. So where are we with iSIM today? Can you give us some insight into some of the products you've seen?
Yeah, sure. I think the most exciting one is the trackers coming to market. So I'm not sure who is here old enough to remember when the iPod came in, the Apple iPod. Gary, yeah? Sorry.
Because I'm the oldest one here.
Stephen raised his hand.
Stephen. So when the iPod came in, it was very interesting. Before the iPod, for the youngsters, we had MP3 players. They could do 100 songs. And they were kind of for the really geeky people that, in my eyes, that really loved their music. They would download their favorite 100 songs, and on the train they would listen to their favorite 100 songs. For a different mood, too bad you had to go back home, reflash your MP3 player. Kind of useful, didn't really take off as much. And then Apple discovered this really small hard disk. The really small hard disk was a hard disk of 2.5-inch hard disks. And they decided to put a hard disk into a MP3 player, which allowed it to go from 100 songs to 1,000 songs. Right? And instead of having to curate your music, most people didn't have more than 1,000 songs in those days. No, it's quite expensive to have music. And they changed the market by thinking of innovation. Well, iSIM does the same. Right? By having one chip less, by going smaller in the device, you open up new markets. So we really like the work we did with Bayer a long time ago, which has now become the Sensors tracker, smart label. Sorry, the right marketing terms. And effectively, it allows you to print printed plastic, the antenna, the battery. The only thing that isn't printed is the one chip. And because they only have one chip, the chip is a radio chip, is an application chip, and it's a SIM. So the integrated SIM allows them to effectively print labels. Now, these labels are probably $10-15 today, but you can see that goes down over time. And you can see that now you can tracking really high value assets of narrowband IoT. Combine it with someone like a satellite operator. We're working with Skylo. They can allow you to roam onto the satellite network from the normal network. So when you leave Shanghai with your tracker, you go onto the satellite network, you come back into Rotterdam, it just picks it up, and you get complete coverage. So that's super exciting. My other favorite example is the Garmin watch. They have narrowband IoT. They have an iSIM. They're not quite using it yet, but they do have the iSIM in it. And again, you can see that helps them create smaller devices. We have with us the FitBark for those who have dogs. FitBark is a smartwatch for dogs. I'm going to try one on my dog next week. So yeah, a lot of interesting, and I think it is about if the form factor gets smaller, the innovation comes. If the price goes down, the innovation comes. Think about the washing machine manufacturer. He's willing to pay $7 for a Wi-Fi module. I don't think that we're quite there with the narrowband IoT modules, but we are going the right direction. It used to be $40 for a module in the mobile space, and I think IoT is really now innovating to bring this down in the better use case. It doesn't need to be 4G high data. It needs to be low data. Some of the new networks. So yeah, very exciting.
It's about looking at the constraints as almost a license to innovate, think differently about the problem. But talking about innovating, I'd like to bring you in, Ken. So tell us a little bit about the vision of iSIM development at Soracom, please.
Thank you. We've been doing the business for in IoT more than 8 years, and I've been doing the telco and the SIM side business 18 years right now. So.
Wow!
And it's a kind of so I was called as SIM guy always internally. So, but yeah, and after we started our business 8 years ago, every year we try to launch the new SIM related service. So at the moment there was we started our business from the plug-in type of card SIM card in the beginning, and the next year we started to introduce embedded SIM, eSIM in the next phase for the MSIM side of things. And for the next year, we also started consumer side of UIC sales for. So every year we try to think about what's the next technology and which is coming next. So we are always searching for the new technology, and iSIM just jumped into the world 3 years ago almost. And we are quite closely working with Sony and Kigen for sure. And we thought, oh, this should be that sort of like a next step for the SIM evolution. So we tried some other technology like software SIM side of SIM, but at the moment there were some like the concern, especially for like security side of things. Of course, that should be the future for sure. But at this moment, we more became like the confident that ISIM can ensure everything. As you mentioned, like how we can protect the security side of things, or how we can prevent like manipulation and so on. So having the eSIM will be the sort of like the future, the option within our roadmap. So that's the current situation.
Fantastic. Well, one of the other things I wanted to talk about is as you've sort of talked about this annual cadence of introducing new SIM capabilities, what markets and what applications are you seeing interest from? Because you just launched the iSIM as a fully commercially available capability last week and have been talking to lots of customers about it.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, as I mentioned, we already have lots of like eSIM customers, and currently, as of today, it's more than like 60% of our customers are actually using the eSIM rather than card SIM. So because of the many customers are already moving to the mass production phase, lots of like hardware customers, I would say, and the card SIM is becoming less, within our distributions. But when we talk to the existing like eSIM customers, they always complain why the MFS2 eSIM is such a big. Like 6x5, it might be a little bit too big, just considering the standard of like a semiconductor, So they just wonder, can we make it much smaller eSIM? Can you provide a much smaller size of eSIM instead? So of course there are some like a use on some other satellite form factors in the industries, but what if you can get rid of everything from the PCB board and from their footprint, then that should be really the good opportunity. And these kind of requirements are coming from like as you mentioned, like as tracking, kind of like tracking industries, and also like smartwatch industries for sure. And we do have lots of like agriculture customers, especially like in the US, like the crops and some other like beehive and so on. So. Or sometimes like the coffee farm and so on. So this kind of like agriculture kind of like techs are also really keen to know about how they can try to utilize. And also we do have lots of like smart metering customers as well. So I think that might be another side application we can think about.
That's fantastic. So if we look forward, there is a lot being said in the world, in the wider world, about ChatGPT, generative AI. What role does device data play in this kind of world where there will be AI integrated in many places and more places than is visible to us?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I think it's quite interesting. I read an article recently that ChatGPT is going to be, will have consumed the whole English language, everything that's ever written in English by the year 2025. All right, so after the year 2025, there is no more English language for ChatGPT to train on, apart from the things that are generated by other AI engines or itself. And what they also realize is that if that happens, right, if only the new data is going to be AI generated, the model is going to degrade because the model is going to reinforce itself. It's going to pathways that it has invented is going to be re-established. So actually, data in the next 5 years is going to be super important, right? And not just data itself, but also where does the data come from and the validity of the data. So if we're running out of English language, right, clearly then language generative AI kind of reaches its peak. Maybe it can have a better algorithm, but it won't have more data. Places that are more data, there is more data, is very much when we're using sensors in the world. Right? Sensors in the world, they will start generating data. We will feed that into AI models. We will start learning things. For instance, preventive maintenance. There's a lot of things that were around now. Listening to engines, being able to make predictions. I think we've been talking about it a long time. That's coming. But the important thing is there, kind of how do you know the data you're consuming is data that has the right validity, the right security. So signing that data, again, it goes back to the Energy Web blockchain as an example, is a really to me, that's going to go everywhere. Right? It's going to go into these AI models. You're going to put data from IoT, but you need to know where the data comes from for it to be worth something, and to know where you're training your data on, or your AI on. Sorry.
Fantastic. What a thought. So make sure whatever you're designing is really secure by nature, because that will possibly be a big way impacting the kind of future of AI. Are there any questions in the audience for our panelists or myself?
Does an iSIM have... So do you need a new piece of silicon from the manufacturer, or can a portion of an existing microcontroller, for example, have a piece of it dedicated, like the crypto cell, for example, to be the iSIM?
So you have to design it in from the start.
Okay.
So yes, there's an IP part that gets integrated into the SoC, the system on chip, which is effectively what used to be a motherboard, all shrunk down to one chip. So you create an area which is a secure enclave. Actually, Apple trialed some of that, and you see that every MCU manufacturer is now coming out with the secure enclaves. Those are certified to different levels. To be an iSIM or a SIM, you need to have a really high certification. So that needs to have physical defenses. It needs to be tested. It needs to be certified. So it's not an easy thing to do. It takes about 7 years. So you go, oh, right, but why? But that's the reason why we started 7 years ago in ARM. Right, so this is a revolution coming. We have about 5 silicon partners that are coming to silicon providers that are coming to market with their secure element being good enough for these kind of use cases. So this is the first 2, 3 that are now in the market. There are 4 or 5 more coming.
So it's about an ecosystem, right? Because
yes, absolutely. It's an ecosystem of people coming together, making that happen. Because it's not just the hardware; it's also the software. It is the provision of the keys. The keys are owned by the MNOs, MVNOs, so the connectivity, it's about now getting that through the whole supply chain. That's what our EVK is about. It's not a high volume game. No, this is a few hundreds of bits of hardware we make available for you to do some prototyping, learning, understanding how this market will develop and how you need to adapt to this market. Does that make sense?
thank you. We have 1 minute left. Are there any other questions in the room that we can answer before we have to let our next session begin? Mayank.
Yeah, the question for Ken, maybe just if you can comment from a connectivity perspective. Are there any differences between eSIM and iSIM, for example?
From a connectivity perspective, are there differences between eSIM and iSIM?
Actually, I don't see so much big difference, but when the iSIM starts, we couldn't put so much like our own application inside. So that means we are doing, providing lots of like the multiple image solutions within our SIM card solution, which used to be. But in case of iSIM, there was such a kind of like restriction, but we couldn't make it happen. But thanks to Kigen support, we are now able to put our own application inside the iSIM solution as well. So I would say that's all the functionality side of things, and also security level exactly the same without any difference between eSIM and iSIM.
Well, thank you very much. With that, please join me in thanking our panelists, and have a great rest.